for our CalMatters segment with ABC 10's Walt Gray. Today we are learning more about what California lawmakers are up to and the state's relationship with its current COVID-19 lab. Here's Walt with more.
Welcome to our weekly discussion of all things current in California politics. I'm Walt Gray. Joining us this week, reporter Emily Hoeven, a political expert for CalMatters.org. Welcome back, Emily. Nice to have you. Politicians, we just say it that way, they're out fundraising and traveling ahead of the midterm elections for next year. Is that a good thing? What's your take on that?
I just think it's super interesting because I think a lot of people don't realize that after the legislative session ends in September, lawmakers don't actually return to Sacramento until January. And during that time, they're in their district, they're traveling, they're having swanky fundraisers with lobbyists and their clients to raise money for the Democratic Party, also the Republican Party. And it's just interesting because there's been a whole host of those trips for the past few months. So some Democratic and Republican lawmakers went to Portugal for some, to study climate change and whatnot. Now they are going to Scotland for the United Nations Climate Change Conference. And then later this month, they're likely going to go to Hawaii for another policy conference. And in between that, they're scattering some fundraisers where tickets to get in are $50,000 or $75,000 a pop.
There is a COVID lab that the state has auto-renewed, and I believe the contract for almost $2 billion. Is there a problem with that?
Well, I think a lot of state lawmakers are very alarmed by this. The state last year created this lab very quickly because we were running low on testing capacity. They gave a $1.7 billion contract to PerkinElmer, which is a diagnostics company. And then almost immediately, there were massive problems in the lab where people were finding test swabs in the bathroom. They were incomplete or inconclusive or incorrect test results. And despite all these problems, the state has auto-renewed that contract through October 31st of next year. And we are still missing a report into the problems that are going on. And to further complicate problems, the director of the lab is actually the former lab director of Theranos, which is a company that is currently under federal investigation. And basically the same federal investigators that are investigating Theranos are also investigating this lab. And there's just a whole lot of interconnected things. And so for a lot of people, that's raising some alarm bells.
So we have a large delegation, or did so, at the climate conference in Scotland. There's not much news coming out of the California delegation, particularly from the governor.
Yeah, so as we know, the governor backed out of the conference at the last minute and cited family obligations. And in his place, he sent Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis. And so she's been there. She actually came back to California on Thursday. But what was rather concerning for a lot of the California press corps was the fact that the governor, when he was going to go, he did not even inform the California press corps until 9 days after the deadline to apply for a press credential, which basically meant that when he went, there would be no one from California covering what he was up to, reporting on what he was doing, and just kind of informing the public about what's going on at this conference. And to this day, they have not publicly released a schedule of what the administration members or the lieutenant governor were doing. And, I've asked questions, other reporters have asked questions, and we've gotten information that way. But before that, the only public place I could find info about California's schedule was on the New Mexico governor's website. So it's just kind of ironic that there's not much public transparency surrounding this.
Well, if anybody's going to dig it up, I'm sure it's going to be you, Emily. Thank you very much. CalMatters is a nonpartisan news organization explaining California policies and politics. Find their work at calmatters.org. You can also sign up for Emily's newsletter there.